difficult to identify a film that can reach an audience. That's so difficult. But you need, everyone, all of us, producers, funders, everyone needs to be better at that.
I think there were like 59 Swedish films releasing last year, and if you compare it to I don't know, to 8-10 years ago, this is a really good figure somehow. On the other hand, if I read the figures right, the recovery rate is not really coming along in a positive sense, and there are less audiences in the rooms in this magic of Paradiso than it would be desired. So it would be very interesting to see where do you see from where does the problem come, but where do you also see the solution short term and the mid term maybe to balance out this element.
Good question. I'm not going to bring up a solution because I can't. But you know, even to me, 59 films last year seems crazy. I know that, Charlotta told me that there were 13 films giving a grant last year, and then there were like 15, 16 for a streamer, and then there were the documentaries. But where the other films come from, I don't know. No one knows. But there were that many films. And the strange thing is that we have really, really low funding also. We have a recovery rate that is like 63 or 65% since the pandemic. We're only above Turkey. We have maybe one of the lowest recovery rates since the pandemic in Sweden. We have also the least funding, the least public funding. It's only Albania, if I'm right, Tomas, that has less money than us. Yeah. So how we can make 59 films a year, I don't know. You have to ask someone else. But we can't continue with this, of course. But it's also, I have to say that we in Sweden are suffering, because I'm a specialist for Sweden. I can't really speak about the whole of Europe. But we have suffered, actually, by very poor leadership for like 15 years. No one has been interested in raising the public fundings. No one has been interested in films, and it's now when we have a new leadership at the Swedish Film Institute that I think something can happen. And it also regarding this overproduction, because it has been a terrible time actually for the producers in Sweden for a long time. And I'm a bit traumatized still, you know. It seems strange to say that, but as also Charlotta said a couple of years, 5 or 6 years ago, you know, the producers in each country, they are so dependent on funding that if the Swedish or the Film Institute says, well, this year only the one-legged producer will get a fund, yeah, there will be a couple that sort of takes away the leg, you know, to get funding, because that's how it works. And we have to realize that it's a very narrow hole you should get into as a producer. I'm sure you agree. So we have so many problems. We need more funding, and we should all get together. All the fundings and the producers should really get together to get more public funding. And the overproduction is, I don't know how to. I think the financiers has to be more. I don't know. How should I say this? But. And it's difficult to identify a film that can reach an audience. That's so difficult. But you need, everyone, all of us, producers, funders, everyone, needs to be better at that.
But do you mean that the audience outreach, or whatever you want to call it, needs to be higher on the policy and the strategy vision of
the of course. Yeah, of course. And also everyone has to be better at identifying the film that someone wants to see, you know. And then we can sort of maybe get away from this overproduction. But also the incentive, the tax incentive in Sweden has been a catastrophe, you know, because we have so little money, and it's no one gets it because it's based on first come, first served. Yeah, first come, first served. So it's just a catastrophe. We have to do something about that. I'm not sure who is going to do anything about it. I made an interview this morning with the Tillväxtverket, as it's called, but the questions were so strange that I don't even think they know how we work. So we have Sweden is a black sheep in Europe right now, actually.
Thank you. Jonas, I'm coming to you, and there's been so many events discussing, or rather raising a question, was it going to happen in Germany? There's been a lot of interpretation of this as well, so obviously there is a reform rolling out, and the idea and the logic behind it is to support German producers and to raise the number and the quality of German films. It's been presented at different events from different angle, but your company and many other companies in Germany are really the ones that on one hand produce core talent that comes out of Germany, but you also co-produce globally with the world. And I wonder, where do you stand in this anticipation of the reform? What is it in a nutshell for you, and what is the main weight that it's going to bring in for the change somehow?
So the reform in a nutshell is basically the title of our panel here is like, okay, let's do less films, but those films with more money. So that was the idea. So,
and like, that is still the idea? Less films with more money?
Yeah, that's the idea. And it's also really black on white. So it's not and I know that in many countries people try to avoid this topic, but in Germany now it's really, okay, let's really do less films. I think last year we had 230 German films released in the cinema. So it's really a topic that the industry now addressed, and in a nutshell, now it's coming down to 3 major changes. So the first pillar is to really have a bigger tax incentive. Right now it's on 20%, and to bring it up to 30%. But those 30% to be real 30%, because now we have 20, but those in reality are 16, because you cannot put in music rights and blah, 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 so on and so on. So to have real 30% tax incentive. The second pillar is to have the investigation obligation by the streamers. And that would be, it's orientated on the French model, like on 20%. There, the only difference between Germany and France would be that in Germany you could only use this money for high-end series and TV. I think in France you're able to invest it also in cinema. But that reform, there's a huge lobby from all the streaming platforms against it. So that is the one that is mostly challenged. And the third one is basically our main federal fund, which is called FFA, to really totally restructure it into an automatic fund. And that would be based on a point system, so that you would get for a certain amount of viewers in the cinema, you would get, I don't know, you make 100,000 admissions, that's 100,000 points. It will be quoted by €1.10, so you would get 110,000 euro for your next film. And then on a festival, you would run in Cannes in competition, you would get another 100,000. You win the Golden Palm, 200,000, and so on. So it's a whole point system. And they would use the money that before was in the fund. They would invest it to this automatic fund, and they would leave a certain amount for very, let's say, art house and documentary films that still would go via jury. Yeah. So these are the 3 pillars in the concept to.
So the automatic fund would be much bigger, if I may say, than the element that is left for the selective funding.
Yes. And the idea behind it is to say, okay, the producer would be able to finance roughly 25% out of this automatic fund, 30% with the tax rebate, so that you have 50% of your financing in place, and then you could go to regional funds and TV and co-production, whatever.
I have a question to you, Thomas, right now. I think a lot of it is leading to the much bigger need of creating a shift on the policy level decision as well, and sort of acknowledging it and trying to find ways around it, if not the common way, but some of the models that may work in different territories. Is that something you're anticipating? Is it something that's also coming up?
Yeah, absolutely, and it will not be a simple task, because you can very clearly see that within Europe we work inside we think we work in a very common way, in the same type of framework, whatever. But you can say we work inside traditions and inside different type of thinkings. So if you look at, for instance, the Nordic countries and what type of mission statements they have, what type of portal paragraphs in their film policies, you can say that they look 180-degree different than, for instance, the one in France. And surprisingly enough, it's more culture in the Nordic one than in the French one. Whatever we think, because the French one is very much about the French audiovisual industry and the French territory and things like that. But on the other hand, that might be a product, because film has since long been seen as an art form. So it's difficult, but of course the conclusion and the discussion will look very different, because in a system where you put the industry as the core focus, the risk is that you will say, but we will need more companies. We don't need stronger companies, we need more companies, because when you should measure yourself as a public body, figures is important. So it might be more interesting to tell the politicians that we have zillion billion production companies than we have 8 really strong production companies. So I think that will be something that is a challenge in certain territories, because then the topic will be even more difficult.